Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this evening's virtual open house to discuss Wood Buffalo's Municipal Development Plan, also known as the MDP, is how we'll be referring to it throughout the evening. My name is Nadia Power. I'm the manager for public engagement with the municipality, and I'm very pleased to be hosting this evening's event. First of all, I want to acknowledge that no matter where you may be tuning in from, I want to acknowledge that this meeting is taking place on Treaty 8 and unceded Métis territory. Now, we've prepared and rehearsed. Generally, we would be out in the communities and holding these open houses in a live event format, but we have prepared as much as we can to be able to bring this presentation to you this evening in this format. Thank you for joining us. And I will ask you to be patient if we do experience any technical problems. If for some reason your connection is lost, there is another way to listen in. The dial-in phone number and the conference ID will be posted in the Q&A chat. So if for some reason you lose this connection, you can still call in. I want to mention as well that we will be recording this event. And at the end of the event this evening, or maybe by sometime tomorrow, this will be available online for your viewing. I want to just give you an overview of our agenda for the evening and introduce the people that are joining me for this open house event. Such Chandiok is the supervisor with the Department of Planning and Development, and he's joined by Shailesh Makwana, a planner with Planning and Development. The O2 Planning and Design team is joining us as well. We have on the line this evening Andrew Palmier and Nicholas Kuhl, as well as Pamela Downey. In just a minute, I'm going to invite Such to give us more information about the MDP and how it will support the growth and development of our region for the next 20 years. Then the O2 planning team will present the draft municipal development plan, and then we'll open the floor for your questions. Throughout the presentation, the Q&A chat feature is available for you to ask questions and provide feedback. Staff are monitoring this as the questions come in. I do want to just give a special shout out here to Megan and Arndis, who are helping with the questions as they're coming in and to organize this event this evening. Thank you very much. As well, we also have Ashley joining us, and she's going to be bringing the questions forward to O2 and our planning and development team to answer. To protect your privacy, the Q&A chat viewing capability is disabled for participants. However, we are able to see all of the comments. I want to now invite Such to introduce himself and to talk a little bit more about the municipal development plan. Such?
Thank you, Nadia. Good evening. My name is Such Chandiok. I'm a supervisor with Planning and Development Department, as Nadia mentioned, and we're here to talk about Municipal Development Plan. I want to give some background on what this plan is. A Municipal Development Plan, or an MDP, is a visionary guiding document. This plan guides how growth and development would occur in the municipality. Under the current Municipal Government Act, every municipality is required to have a Municipal Development Plan. While we currently have a growth-based MDP, or Municipal Development Plan, which was approved in 2011, Council's strategic plan identified revision of this current plan as one of the action items. Last year, Planning and Development did a lot of background research and evaluated policies in the current MDP for their application in the current context. We also studied about 18 municipal development plans from all over Canada to identify new themes or topics that we can include in the new plan. After a detailed background study, we found a lot has changed since 2011, and the current MDP must be revised to match the current reality of our region. Thereafter, planning consultants O2 Planning and Design were brought on board to help us write the MDP. Andrew from O2 Planning and Design is here with us today to talk about our strategy, approach, and results of phase 1 engagement, along with our progress on this project so far. With that, I'll like to invite Andrew to proceed with the presentation. Andrew?
Great. Thank you very much. I appreciate the invitation and the opportunity to be here tonight. This is really exciting for us to hold our second open house and to talk to you about the emerging shape and direction of the municipal development plan. With that, I will turn off my camera so that we can focus our attention on the slide deck. Perfect. So with regard to the agenda or the overview of the presentation this evening, I'll talk about at a very high level and quickly sort of the need and the intent of the project. We'll review some of the high level background research that was completed, talk about the phase 1 engagement and the results of that. And we'll also talk about the draft vision and goals that started to emerge as a result of all of that previous work, the overarching big moves, and then we'll get into the generalized land use maps for the rural communities. And then we'll talk very briefly and quickly about next steps, and then we'll open it up to conversation. So in terms of project review, as such it indicated, really, Wood Buffalo is preparing a new MDP to reflect the changes in the region, so the social, cultural, and economic conditions of the region. And what we're looking to do here is to make sure that the new MDP is created with substantial input from residents to ensure that it reflects local values, opportunities, and challenges, and that it's a community-based vision for the future, for the region's future. So what is the MDP? Well, an MDP, as such had mentioned, is a provincially mandated document that actually sets out sort of the vision or the blueprint for how growth and development will happen in the next 20 years. And of course, for this, it's how growth will change and happen in Wood Buffalo over the next 20 years. And what it provides is it provides a comprehensive land use policy framework, and it's a strategic path forward to manage growth across the region. You know, it should and it will guide both short and long-term decision making by council and administration. So when you think about it in those terms, it becomes really, really important because it starts to influence strategic planning, capital budgets, and all of these sorts of things that go into making important and critical infrastructure decisions within a municipality. And it also talks about how the shape of development and the future changes you might see in your communities over years as well. So why is it important to do a new MDP in Wood Buffalo? Well, simply put, a lot's changed since the previous one in 2011. In 2011, the MDP was very much focused on growth, and it had projections in it that talked about Wood Buffalo hitting a population of around 230,000 people by 2030. And as we're all aware, that growth hasn't emerged, and there's a significant and several factors around that. I mean, we have the floods from 2013, as you see in the slides here, the 2014 global drop in oil prices, which resulted in an economic downturn, the 2016 Horse River fire. Now we had floods just as recently as last year in 2020. So in response to these changing conditions, the municipality is taking this opportunity to reflect on today's conditions through a new municipal development plan. So where we are in the project, you can see here by the 4 where it says engagement direction. That's where we are, phase 2 engagement. But in this process to date, we've done the background research, the phase 1 engagement, significant amount of analysis, and we started to draft the vision, the 5 goals, and the overarching big moves, which I'll present to you in a moment. And then from here, we'll move along to finalizing the MDP and then ultimately to council review. So background research and review. As part of any sort of planning process like this, you want to understand the place. You want to understand best practices to see where you can glean insight and information, and you want to explore the communities, and you want to look at current conditions and opportunities and challenges. So doing that, our fundamental starting point was, of course, the 2011 MDP review. What's its current applicability? What could we bring forward into the 2021 MDP? In addition to that, we looked at over 50 Wood Buffalo documents to sort of look at the overarching policy direction and ensure there's some alignment that we can find in them. And we also took a look at the 2020 place brand strategy as well. So the intent was to really understand the policy framework and the place brand strategy. And on top of that, we also looked at around 15 other municipalities from across the country primarily, for a variety of different reasons, whether it was a new update at MDP just as a best practice, or whether they had been exploring and looking at some issues or component that we felt might be really important or relevant to wood buffalo. And then we did a series of opportunities and strengths mapping, site visits and meetings, obviously before travel restrictions came into place. And then we were also looking at what population and employment projections could look like. So the major takeaways from all of that, though, is that many of the policies from the 2011 MDP remain relevant today. But that said, there's significant on that also got to use some revision. And that the heavy focus of the 2011 MDP on growth needs to be replaced. And what we've found through public engagement and through all of this work and the stakeholders we spoke to already is that we need to emphasize a people first or a community-based approach for the 2021 MDP. So the phase 1 engagement. So this was conducted primarily over October. I think it started, it says on the slide, it started September 28th and it ended November 1st. And what we wanted to talk to here is we wanted to talk to the public, to rights holders and stakeholders through engagement process, to introduce the project, to create an awareness about it and the opportunities to engage, to have conversations where we could start to glean the values, the visions, and the priorities of the community, and to learn about initial concerns, issues, and opportunities that there might be, and then to take all of that and then to use it as a critical component of developing a vision, goals, and strategic directions that I'll go over with you. So in that first round of engagement, we had about 700 or so participants. We had 2 open houses, 35 workshops and virtual meetings. We did an end draft and mapping component, online survey. We pushed it out through communications and social media posts, promotional videos, newsletters, radio, and signage. And from there, what we started to hear was some incredibly important insights into the values and priorities of Wood Buffalo residents. And it really started to confirm in our minds that a community-based approach was important. And while we obviously won't get into all of the detail of the engagement summary right now, there were 5 main categories that we really started to see emerge. People and community, nature and recreation, responsible development, economy and innovation, arts, culture, and representation. And then you can see through here, there's about 21 sort of sub areas within each one of those. So from there, what we did is we took the place brand, those building blocks, the components of the 2011 MDP, and the components of best practice that we could, and then we looked at the engagement feedback categories, and we started to synthesize and bring those together to create the vision and the goals. And what we found here was really sort of 5 key ideas that started to emerge: celebrating cultural diversity and inclusion, community and belonging, economic resilience and innovation, connecting to nature, and responsible development. And from there, we created a draft vision. And this is one of the things we're hoping in this round of engagement is to get this feedback from you. Does it resonate with you? Are there changes you'd like to see to it? But, I don't generally want to read slides, but I think I will go ahead and just read this one just for the emphasis of it and the importance of it. So the draft vision so far, a diverse region to live, work, play, and stay forever. The Wood Buffalo of tomorrow will be built on our greatest strengths. Our region is a place like no other, a place of incredible opportunity and natural wonder, a place of resilient community spirit, cultural diversity, and remarkable Indigenous strength. By focusing and building on what makes Wood Buffalo great, we will pursue the opportunity together for all those who call Wood Buffalo home. We will continue to develop a region with a place and community-based approach to reflect local values and make it a forever home. Creating a healthy and sustainable region for tomorrow is Wood Buffalo's story to tell, and this is only the beginning. Supplementing that vision, as I said, we started to identify those 5 key goals, just to emphasize them again: connecting to nature, responsible development, celebrating cultural diversity, inclusion, economic resilience and innovation, and community belonging. So just very quickly and briefly on each one of those goals: community and belonging. Wood Buffalo provides a sense of place, safety, and belonging, fostered by a community built around meeting the needs of all. Connecting to nature. Wood Buffalo's cherished wilderness, protected natural ecosystems, and lively parks, open space, and waterfront are a hallmark of our region. And that's important because we really started to hear from people that access to nature was so important and something that was so valuable towards their identity of community. Responsible development. As a desirable location to live for all who come to our region, Wood Buffalo grows intentionally with development that makes life better for all. And again, this is really thinking about that shift away from just that emphasis on growth to saying we're going to grow very strategically and very deliberately in very defined locations. Economic resilience and innovation. Economic diversification and development will bring resiliency to the local economy and prosperity throughout Wood Buffalo, while not forgetting our core industry. And this is something that we really heard a lot of from the stakeholder groups and the public when we had the previous conversations, was that obviously oil and gas is a huge driver and nobody wants to forget that, and nobody is suggesting that it's going anywhere or that we should forget it. But there are spin-off opportunities, that there are opportunities for incubation and different sort of creative industries to start to emerge. And it's something that this plan really wants to take forward and emphasize. And then celebrating cultural diversity and inclusion. Brimming with pride, our region celebrates its Indigenous history and is committed to ongoing reconciliation. The recognition of our unique past, vibrant arts, culture, global diversity, and inclusivity make Wood Buffalo an amazing place to live. This is an incredibly important goal, I think, for everyone in the region with regard to reconciliation, and really this MDP is going to put that as a key component moving forward. So the overarching big moves. So typically what you generally see is a vision, maybe some goals, and then you just get into policy. But we wanted to add another layer to this that we think was really, really important. And these big moves sort of represent the major ways in which the 2021 MDP will differ from the previous one, and that the big moves work together to achieve the goals and the vision of the MDP. So you have the vision, you have the goals, but then what does that translate to into actual actions or actual policy directions that we need to explore? So in total, what emerged was sort of 9 overarching big moves. And I'll go through each one of them in sequence here. So the focus on people and community. I mean, this is something that I think I've just sort of covered over already, but the idea really here is that at the heart of all of our communities are the people, and that the focus on people and community is really going to be a huge priority within the plan itself. You're going to see policy directions start to emerge in it that talk about ensuring residents have access to their daily needs with an accessible, safe environments. We'll see policy directions that'll talk about social, cultural, recreational, and employment opportunities to support healthy and fulfilling lives. Really, it's about enhancing quality of life. And that kind of sounds like maybe something that is sort of self-evident in a lot of ways, but it is a fundamental shift from just focusing on growth to focusing on community, and it's just worth emphasizing it once again. Establishing green and blue networks. So very simply, a green network is, connects natural open spaces and trails across the region. It's talking about mobility options, enhancing open space, improving access to natural areas in a sustainable manner, and building off of what we heard over and over again in our engagement about, the recreation and the outdoor opportunities in Wood Buffalo are just so incredible and amazing. And how does that become a real, true strength that is accessible to everyone? And then complementing the green network is the idea of a blue network, which is really enhanced waterfront and river recreation opportunities. This also speaks to flood protection and being careful where we develop. And it's also recognizing a historic connection to the rivers and the water. So together, what those two, the green network and the blue network, really do, it's about preserving sensitive landscapes, and it's also about access to nature in a really responsible and meaningful way. So leveraging existing assets and expertise is also another big move within the emerging MDP. And what we're seeing here really is that Wood Buffalo is well positioned to leverage its expertise in new and innovative opportunities. There's a lot of incredibly talented people with a lot of incredibly transferable and important skill sets and training within the region. And what the MDP is looking to do is to promote the pursuit of local innovation, whether that's through business incubator spaces, increased post-secondary education opportunities, whatever it might be, is that the MDP wants to make sure that it's a supportive document for economic diversification, and that we're really building on that existing asset and expertise. And that'll just translate into, stability in the region, more opportunities, higher quality of life for residents, keep people able to grow up, stay, raise families, and really think about Wood Buffalo in the long term as well. So simplifying the transportation network. If you take a look at the 2011 MDP, it has a lot of, again, because it was accommodating such a significant amount of growth, it was showing some pretty sizable moves in terms of highways and ring roads and regional transit corridors that were significant, upsizing the transportation network in order to accommodate such a huge amount of growth. And with that not so much on the table anymore, it's really about right-sizing the transportation network, optimizing transit options, and finding efficiency in the roads, and really thinking about more options for mobility throughout the region. Fostering downtown is the heart of the region. Fort McMurray is the economic center of Wood Buffalo, as we know, and there is the 2021 Downtown Area Redevelopment Plan, and it's really about emphasizing the importance of the downtown, seeing it grow and emerge as an arts, entertainment, and cultural district, and an employment district as well too, emphasizing connections to McDonald Island, and really acknowledging that the health of your downtown, the health of your heart, is really, really important, and is a real priority moving forward. The other big move that we're looking to do here is essentially reset or reconsider the approach to manage work camps in the region. Different approaches have been discussed in the past, such as you can see in that circle there, the radius-based approach to where work camps should or shouldn't be, or the distance traveled based location, which is that more confined sort of squiggly yellow that you'll see there as well. So it's really hitting pause here and saying, okay, well, let's really emphasize what's the most appropriate evidence-based approach to looking at work camps. Increased arts and cultural representation and collaboration will be an emphasis of this municipal development plan. Obviously Wood Buffalo, it has a really rich history, a First Nations history, and Métis heritages, so that needs to be front and center in consideration moving forward. The 2018 census also recorded a significant ethnic diversity. And quite frankly and simply, the third bullet there, it's sort of self-evident in a way, right? But the quality of life is enhanced through celebrating unique cultures of the region. It's really important, and really finding the promotion of and the participation in diverse arts and cultural activities, education opportunities to bring people together. And what's really also important too is opportunities for people to make their voices heard, to express their ideas and to tell their stories, and to be part of the community. Just on growth, responsible growth, like we said before and previously here, 230,000 was the previous population target for 2030 in the old MDP, or the existing MDP. That showed, if you go into the MDP, significant growth areas all around Fort McMurray and elsewhere. But the region is largely now has the required lands to accommodate growth over the next 20 years. So the 2021 MDP is a big move right now. We're looking at not allowing the development of additional growth areas until existing areas are built out. That's Parsons Creek, that's Saline Creek. So there's significant land capture there. And then in the rural communities, there's areas to grow as well. And the focus really to focus investments and efforts on existing communities and allow the prioritization of enhancing the amenities, the sense of place, and really spending the next 20 years on focusing on the communities that we already have and making them even better than they are today. One of the last big shifts here, or big moves within the MDP, is going to be the emphasis on rural communities. Like Wood Buffalo is one of the largest municipalities in Canada, and due to its size, the MDP incorporates guidance for both urban and rural, as well as for the region as a whole, as we know. And what's really changed since 2011 is that there's been a whole series of ASPs done throughout the rural communities, and we need to go take a look at those, translate those back up into the MDP, and then sort of work collaboratively with residents, stakeholders, and rights holders on what we want is put into the municipal development plan. But that rural emphasis is something that we want to put front and center moving forward. So with that, Nick Cool, who's a planner in our office, is going to run through the generalized land uses as it relates to the rural communities.
Thank you very much, Andrew, for going over the big moves, the goals, and the vision that we've put forward so far for the draft NDP. So I should have my screen shared here, and what I'm going to be introducing now are the generalized land use concepts that we've prepared for each of the rural communities throughout Wood Buffalo, and then just provide a little bit more context about what that means. And before we move over to each individual community, though, I think it's important to take the 10,000 foot perspective that is really important, of course, to a municipal development plan, a plan that does look at the entire region. And that looks like an actual regional growth concept itself. So the map that you're seeing on the screen here is a high-level policy map for all of Wood Buffalo, from the Northwest Territories to the south, from the west side of the county or the municipality, all the way to the Saskatchewan border. And this tackles a lot of the big picture, big moves that Andrew just spoke to. What you see on this map, for example, following the Athabasca River and the Christina River, Clearwater River, and Snai, are this concept of the green and blue networks actually implemented and placed onto the map itself. And of course, while Fort McMurray is the urban service area in the entire region, we can't forget the rural communities, hamlets, and also the indigenous and other forms of communities that exist throughout the entire region. So what this high-level regional concept map is really meant to convey are the regional opportunities that perhaps can't always be seen at an individual basis. So with this map, beyond just the blue and green network concepts, we also have included several transportation network considerations as well. And this is an area where we're still open to feedback from rural community members as to how they feel we aren't addressing their needs. One thing I'll raise, for example, is there's been a perceived lack of consideration, for example, for how the highway network should service rural communities. So that, among many other topics, are things that we really are looking to hear feedback on from members of the rural communities in particular, to ensure, as Andrew mentioned, that we're emphasizing rural communities appropriately through the municipal development plan. Over the next several slides now, I'm going to be introducing the generalized land uses that we are so far proposing for each of the rural communities. And I want to emphasize that these are draft land use concepts and obviously very open and amenable to changes to any or all of them. But they are the documents that we put together so far, and what we're going to be presenting to you today, as Andrew also mentioned, are largely revisions and updates that reflect the planning work that's gone into the area structure plans that have been prepared over the past 10 years since the 2011 MDP was adopted. The maps that you see will be pretty colorful. You'll see blotches of red and yellow, green, purple, and gray throughout them. So what I'm doing here is introducing to you what these actual colors mean when you see them on the maps. Importantly, the red that you see identifies the community cores. So while not every rural community has a community core, where they exist, it's important to note that these are truly the hearts of the communities where we see the local commerce, recreational activities, and the true life and sociocultural aspects of life in these communities come to fore. So identifying these areas where they exist and ensuring we have a policy framework that supports them and enables them to continue serving that purpose in the hearts of their hamlets is very important. Where you see yellow colors on the maps, these speak to the established and priority residential areas. So these are the places and communities where there already are built out residential communities or where new residential development should be focused. So again, not every community has priority residential areas. Some wish to remain the same, and that's okay. But where you see yellow, this is identifying those areas that we anticipate being for residential first and foremost. The purple blotches are the employment areas. So again, these are broken into established and priority employment nodes. And this is where there are either existing concentrations of commercial uses, so stores or businesses outside of the community cores themselves, or in the case of priority employment areas, areas where we've identified the potential for future businesses, industrial uses, and other employment generating things to be located in these communities. The last two that you see on the bottom there, the parks and conservation areas, I think these are fairly self-explanatory. These are the green spaces that we speak of, the lands designated for public enjoyment and or environmental preservation. And then of course, the municipal infrastructure in gray. So things where we see landfills, sewage lagoons, or water treatment facilities, the things that help our communities function. So the first community I'll be introducing here in the first generalized land use map is that of the community of Anzac. So Anzac is a community that had an area structure plan adopted in 2012, so just 1 year after the municipal development plan was approved. And the community, as with all the area structure plans, had a tremendous amount of input and engagement in the preparation of this document. So one thing you'll hear me emphasizing throughout the remaining communities that I speak to is that we really are trying our best to reflect the desires of the community that were expressed, not just through this area structure planning process, but of course, obviously through the engagement we've done for this project as well. So at a high level, we see that community core close to the Anzac Recreation Center remaining in place as was identified in the area structure plan. Where we see and contemplate future residential growth is close to Highway 881 and Stony Mountain Road. And this is again reflective of the growth identified in the area structure plan for Anzac. Some of the less tangible policies in terms of the land use map, though, that I'd like to discuss with you today about Anzac, though, is that we're considering introducing policies that more broadly enable greater access to and increased use of the community center itself. So something that we've heard loud and clear from residents of Anzac is that while they have this tremendous asset in their community, finding more ways to allow community members easier access to that facility and use of that facility in a way that better celebrates local arts and culture in particular is very important to them. One thing that's also important to consider in the new municipal development plan as we go forward is that we need to find ways to support and incorporate local development plans that have been adopted by First Nations and Métis groups in the Willow Lake area broadly to ensure that they're coordinated with the planning initiatives of the regional municipality of Wood Buffalo itself. So there's a spirit and a concept of collaboration that we're hoping to embed in this plan that didn't necessarily exist as clearly in the previous document. And then the final major policy shift that I'll speak to about Anzac this evening is that there's an idea here to explore connecting the eastern end of Stony Mountain Road into a new north-south corridor to the east of the community. And what we want to accomplish with that is just make sure that there's ease of access to the community core itself, and that there will be additional opportunity for people from outside of the Anzac area to actually get into the community easier and promote and support those local businesses. The next community I'll be speaking about is Conklin. Conklin's area structure plan was adopted in 2013. So again, this is a newer plan that's happened after the 2011 MDP. So what you see here is a land use concept that largely carries forward what was heard in the 2013 planning process. Importantly, in Conklin, there are significant land constraints that exist, particularly as they relate to the provision of residential lands. And there is a considerable amount of growth pressure in Conklin as well that we've heard from community members. So working with the community to understand its needs and the land constraints that exist, and then finding ways to work with Conklin to increase the land supply in areas where it was required, is incredibly important for the future of this community, and is something that we'll be focusing on in the 2021 MDP. There's also an identified need to support neighborhood commercial uses in the community core to ensure that we're creating opportunities for local business and neighborhood services to be provided in the community itself. Members of the Conklin area have also been clear to us that they would like to be able to see more opportunities for youth and younger people to have part-time or temporary employment in the area, and more broadly for them to be able to access basic services that right now are not necessarily provided within the community. And then most importantly, and again, something that was clearly identified through the area structure plan and has been repeated to us throughout our engagement on the MDP project so far, is the importance of ensuring protection of water sources and areas that have been deemed significant to the community, such as Christina Lake, the Jackfish River, and Wasasi Park. So ensuring that we're limiting development where appropriate along water courses and protecting these critical green and blue infrastructure elements is something that's very important to residents of Conklin, and something that we are very, very keen to see included in this in the new MDP. For the community of Draper, there's a proposed area structure plan that's currently in development and working through the planning process. So while this hasn't yet been formally adopted by the municipality, this is again an important document that we think is worth considering and contemplating in the policy that we put forward. And again, I do want to emphasize, above and beyond that document, we have been looking and diving deep into the feedback we've received from members of the Draper community to make sure that any policy we propose here, again, reflects the desires and the wishes of residents who call that place home. So something that we've heard is very important to members of the Draper community is that future development should be required to reflect the existing pattern of acreages, and that we should be avoiding the fragmentation of land suitable for agriculture. So something special about the Draper community is that it is one of the few places throughout all of Wood Buffalo where there actually is agriculture that's happening. So recognizing that, protecting it, and preserving those lands is something that will help retain and preserve the distinct character of the Draper community. The other thing that we're looking to include in the municipal development plan right now is ensuring that country residential style development is only being allowed in areas that are considered safe from flood and wildfire risk. And I want to emphasize that what that means is still up to consideration by the municipality. So what we are doing from an MDP perspective is ensuring policy remains at a very high level, and that we're able to simply be implementing the wills and desires of the municipality as those policy projects progress. For the community of Fort Chip, again, there was an area structure plan just approved in 2018, so 2.5 years ago. And there was, again, a considerable amount of public engagement and community consultation that went into the development of that plan. And even since then, in our discussions with a lot of the Métis and First Nation communities up there, we've heard that a lot has changed even since 2018. So we see a bit of a shift from the perspective of the 2011 MDP in terms of what this community is looking to see happen here. And this is largely reflected in a desire to see the municipality work more closely with local organizations, rights holding groups, and other stakeholders to ensure that we're promoting and coordinating land swaps where appropriate to help coordinate and consolidate land. Land constraints are a considerable issue in Fort Chipewyan, and so what we want to make sure we're doing is providing the opportunity and the forum for discussion that will make sure all stakeholders and rights holders in the community are working collaboratively to advance the best interests of everyone. We're also looking at introducing policy through the MDP that would encourage infill development to make sure that we're making the most efficient use possible of underutilized lands both within the community core and surrounding areas. And recognizing the land constraints that exist, we have identified new priority residential areas for future development to the east of the community core and the existing built area. Lastly, it's incredibly important in this community to ensure that development is limited in areas that are identified as significant, again, to the community or environmentally sensitive. The Lake Athabasca shoreline is almost universally valued and cherished, and finding ways to make sure that we're promoting access to it in a responsible way and not overdeveloping the waterfront itself is something that the MDP must include. The community of Fort Fitzgerald is located in the far, far northern extents of the municipality of Wood Buffalo, and I believe currently has a population of about 8 people. So this is a designated hamlet within the municipality, and it is still very important for us to consider in the municipal development plan. But in terms of the policy contemplated for this community, broadly, we're ensuring that the municipality commits to meeting periodically with residents to ensure that their challenges are being addressed to the greatest extent that the municipality can, and then supporting modest residential increases in population only in line with the existing pattern of residential development. The community of Fort McKay had an area structure plan adopted in 2018. So again, this is another community where we see significant change to the identified land use development trajectory compared to the 2011 MDP. So we want to make sure that with Fort McKay, the municipality is, again, continuing to meet with Fort McKay residents to ensure that their challenges are being addressed, and that particularly when it comes to accessing municipal facilities and services, there's a spirit of collaboration and ongoing conversation that's happening there. This is another community where we see tremendous need and opportunity to work closely with local organizations and rights holding groups to ensure that we're promoting and coordinating land swaps so that, again, land is being consolidated in a way that's beneficial to everyone who's involved in the Fort McKay community. And then lastly, one of the policy shifts and directives that we're looking at here is supporting the modest growth on land leased by the Fort McKay Métis to provide for residential development together with complementary commercial and institutional uses that can help create a defined community core. So through that area structure planning process, there was a community core identified, and the municipality is committed through this policy framework that we're proposing to ensure that the development interests of the Fort McKay community are realized. For the community of Gregoire Lake Estates, this community is included in the Willow Lake Area Structure Plan that was adopted in 2015 by the municipality. And what's important to understand about Gregoire Lake Estates is that there's really no physical expansion of the community that can be accommodated because the community is fully built out. There are major constraints on further expansion. So the focus of the 2021 MDP when it comes to Gregoire Lake Estates will be primarily protecting the existing pattern of development and the way that character is expressed through the built form. It's also important when we look not just at Gregoire Lake Estates, but at Willow Lake broadly, that we enhance community access to the lake while ensuring that there's minimal impact on the lake's environment and natural features itself. So this again speaks to this concept of a blue and green network that enhances access while also preserves the most environmentally sensitive elements of the natural bounty that we find throughout the municipality. The community of Janvier had an area structure plan adopted in 2016. So once again, a community that's had a more clear vision and identified growth trajectory established for it since the 2011 MDP was adopted. And in Janvier, one of the major concerns that we've heard from community members in the discussions that we've had with them is that there's a lack of a community space right now for residents to be able to come together, celebrate, and also educate their residents. And there's also an opportunity that's been identified where having spaces like that could actually provide additional opportunities for other organizations, including the municipality, but also organizations external to the regional municipality, to come in and provide more services to the residents of Janvier. So the policy direction for the MDP for this community looks at identifying more ways for a community space to be provided. And again, working collaboratively with Janvier to identify solutions that can address a lot of the shortage that's being experienced there in affordable and safe housing throughout the community. The final major policy directive from the Janvier community that we've heard expressed to us through our engagement is that we need to encourage the protection and preservation of the natural environment in areas that are deemed significant to the community. So you might have noticed that that's a recurring theme we've heard throughout a lot of the rural communities that I've discussed today. And again, this is why we see the need and a lot of opportunity, to be quite frank, in promoting again this green network of protected spaces that are easily accessible by residents. And the final community that I'll be speaking about this evening is Saprae Creek Estates. So Saprae Creek is currently undergoing a hamlet boundary expansion process, I believe, with the municipality. So our approach to this community is ensuring that we're being cognizant, aware of, and reflective of this ongoing process. But more importantly, at an actual policy level, what we've realized through our engagement with this community is that primarily these protected natural areas that exist throughout and within this community are, again, very important to residents of Saprae Creek, and that we need to encourage development where it may happen that is in harmony with the natural setting. And then in relation to the actual expansion itself, should that go forward, the policy that we're contemplating for the MDP is simply supporting the modest expansion of Saprae Creek to the south and east in a form that's consistent with the current densities. So that concludes the overview of the land use concepts for the rural communities. I encourage anyone who is following along at home to use the live event Q&A function that's on the side of the Teams chat window. If you have any questions or you want further information about some of the things that we've been thinking about and developing for the rural communities in particular, or about the MDP project broadly, that is the best forum right now to raise your questions to our team. And following my summary of the next steps for the project, what we'll be doing is engaging in a live Q&A session with the participants tonight. So in terms of the next steps for the project team, we obviously have to sit back down and get our heads together and sharpen our pencils and start drafting that MDP. But of course, before we do that, what we'll be doing is preparing a comprehensive engagement summary document that really brings together everything that we've heard through these open house sessions, the online survey that we have that's on rmwb.ca/MDP, and then through a lot of the workshops with stakeholders and rights holders that we've been conducting throughout the month of February, to make sure that everything that we're being told and everything we're hearing is being considered and incorporated into that final draft MDP document. Once we prepare the draft MDP, what we'll be doing is bringing it forward for council review sometime in May. And as part of that process, the document will be made publicly available for all members of the public to review and provide comments on, both to the public team, to the MDP team, and to council itself. And at the actual council meeting, there will be a public hearing where you'll be able to sign up and give a presentation, if you so choose, to council regarding the MDP. And that is really where your involvement lies over the next couple months of this project. We encourage everyone listening this evening to stay informed at, again, that website that you see in the bottom left-hand corner, rmwb.ca/MDP. And once that draft document becomes available, to review it and make your comments heard. So with that, I want to thank everyone again who has taken the time to listen to our presentation this evening, and I believe I'll be passing the mic and the screen back over to Nadia. Thank you very much.
Hi guys, sorry about that. We were bound to have one of us be on mute while we're trying to speak. Sorry, I was just saying thank you so much to Andrew and Nick. That was quite a detailed presentation, a lot of information to take in there. If any of you listening this evening may have tuned in to the last open house, you'll notice a significant difference between the last presentation and this, is that today we really went community by community with all of the different rural communities and focused our attention on what we've heard and what the MDP is going to tell us for the specific communities. We're happy to start taking your questions now. We have some questions coming in already. As the question comes in, I will direct it to one of our subject matter experts, and I will trust that if anybody wants to jump in and add anything, you certainly can do that. The first question I'm going to direct over to Shailesh, if I may. Alexander is asking, how does this plan differ from the 2011 MDP, specifically in the rural areas? Shailesh?
Yes, Alexander, I think that's a great question. In fact, one of the major rationale for doing this new MDP is to focus on the growth and development of rural communities. As you're familiar with the MDP 2011, the current MDP, the directions for growth was based from the vision for rural communities that was established sometime back in 2006-7. And in the current MDP, that is 2011, we have very high level statements, or we should say directions for growth. Mostly it was kind of a talking the balanced growth and protected residential characters of the rural communities and so on. The policies are at such a high level that implementation is challenging without further details. So there has been a lot of changes in the region, like and affects both urban and rural settlements. As Nick and Andrew presented very well, thoroughly, each communities, along with social, cultural, and economic changes, the vision for future growth, future planning for rural communities also need to be reflected in the new MDP. So saying that, since the approval of this current MDP in 2011, there are a number of area structure plans that we worked, the municipality worked with the rural communities so closely and prepared and adopted those area structure plans in such a detail that definitely says something that we really need to shift from the previous growth, the vision that we had in the current MDP. So the new MDP will definitely focus on that to accommodate or align with the area structure plan policies, or somewhat the implementation that we are trying to include in this new MDP, which also kind of giving us like talking to the people when we were preparing the area structure plans. It is also we had a lot of engagements, and we have a lot of insight and good relationship with the rural communities, which give insight of the details that we really want to include in the MDP on many aspects of their life in the rural communities. Saying that the new MDP will make sure to include high level and not to high level policies only, but the strategic directions and some implementing policies that will support the recent planning work done in ASPs and align with the regional growth approach. The new MDP will also focus and include the policies that are community specific. So as I think Nick mentioned very clearly, that each of the community has a specific need and specific feedback on what they are looking forward for the future of this community. So the new MDP will definitely looking forward to include such kind of a comments, or like such kind of a policies and directions that can really have some teeth on ground that we can implement. Saying that the new MDP will focus and include the diverse economy for sure, affordable housing, green and blue network that we discuss about, accessibility to communities, connecting to the nature. Actually, those are the themes or the areas that we really want to focus in the detail that we can capture in the rural community, along with the safety, emergency preparedness, art and culture, tourism activities, and service level in the rural communities. These are some of the areas or the themes that we really want to include, and some policies on these aspects of the topics. The new MDP will include policies and directions in general in line with the council adopted call to action plan for the truth and reconciliation for every opportunity to work with the rural communities. I think that is the aim we are targeting for this new MDP. I hope this explains a bit in the rural communities how it differs from the current MDP. Thanks, Nadia.
Thank you. Thanks, Shailesh, for that detailed response. I just want to mention to everybody that if you have follow-up questions or new questions, if you're tuning in here, please make sure to get your questions in the Q&A chat. After we conclude this evening, if you do have something else you'd like to ask that you think about afterwards, please do make a point of going online to rmwb.ca/MDP, and you'll find an Ask a Question function there, and you can please submit your question there after this event this evening. The next question, I'm going to direct it over to Such, if I may, and Alyssa is asking, why do we need an MDP? Such?
Thank you, Nadia, for that question. It's definitely an interesting one and has some educational component attached to it. Why do we need an MDP? First and foremost, the Municipal Government Act, the legislation through which all the municipalities are governed in the province of Alberta, requires every municipality to have an MDP. Also, this document is a concept that's followed all through the world, everywhere in terms of planning. All the municipalities and cities, they prepare a plan that directs them to a particular vision. And that vision could contain some strategic directions, some underlying goals that they want to achieve in long term. As a part of planning process, we feel it is important, number one, and number two, it's required as per law by every municipality. I'll keep it short and sweet. So that's the answer, Nadia. I'll pass it back to you.
Thank you. Thanks very much for that, Such. And don't turn your camera off. We're going to go right back to you again now with the next question. It's from somebody who's joined us anonymously, but their question is, in terms of the economic development, has there been any input from Kiano into the plan and how they can support the plan?
Thank you, Nadia, for that question. Yes, we have actually been talking to a number of stakeholders, not only Kiano, but other stakeholders in the region, including Chamber of Commerce, including development agencies, different businesses. As part of phase one engagement, we had almost 35 one-on-one meetings with different agencies, stakeholders in the region. There were over 200 man hours invested into first round of engagement. And this is our second round of engagement where we're trying to reach every single stakeholder that we can to get their feedback and incorporate it into the MDP. We did get in touch with Kiano back in time, and we have another engagement planned with them very, very shortly in a few days here. That's my answer, Nadia. Back to you.
Thank you. Thanks for that, Such. Yes, certainly an important group that we want to be able to connect with. I'm glad that we do have that scheduled. Next, another question from Anonymous, or somebody else who's joined us anonymously. And I'm going to ask Nick to address this. Nick took us through the different communities. This is a question about Anzac. And the person on the line says, in Anzac, it looked like there was residential proposed along the railway. Can this be clarified? And just before we move over to Nick, it might be helpful if we pull up the map for Anzac. I think that might have been slide 37 here.
Yeah, is everyone able to see my screen? So this is the proposed land use concept that we've put together for the community of Anzac, and where we see on the east side of the railway lines right here, that priority residential land. That's land that was previously identified through that area structure planning process in 2012 as areas where Anzac would like to see itself grow into the future. So I want to emphasize that right now, this doesn't mean that there will be residential development happening there over the next 20 years, but where there might be a renewed interest in development in the Anzac community sometime between now and 2041, it's one of the locations that was previously identified by the municipality and by residents of Anzac as being a desirable place to see future growth happen. So it is absolutely priority residential land east of the railway tracks, and that is also predicated on future connections across the railway, as I mentioned, the Stony Road extension to a future north-south connector throughout the municipality. But thank you for that question. It's a great point, and your eyes are sharp. That is residential land.
Thank you, Nick. And again, just to remind everybody, this presentation will be available for your viewing online. You can go and check it out and have a closer look. The next question, going back to Nick again, Christina is asking us, Nick, how will the municipality be working in partnership with the rural communities?
Thanks, Christina, for that question. Working with the rural municipalities is incredibly important, and there's an ongoing relationship that really has to be fostered and curated and sustained throughout the next 20 years of municipal development to ensure that municipal or rural communities themselves are seeing their interests heard and acted upon at that regional level. So throughout the policies that we're considering implementing into the actual MDP itself, you might have heard me talk quite frequently about making sure the municipality is at the table with community leaders and community organizations and ensuring that the needs and the concerns of community members are understood. And this is something that just in discussions with the planning and development team, we've considered we might want to actually include in the implementation section of the MDP. So committing the municipality to ongoing and continued conversations with these different community groups. This is something that to a certain extent the municipality already does, so it's not a new idea, but it's just one way that we can continue ensuring that that connection is always there. Community members know who they should be reaching out to when they have concerns, and that when concerns arise, the municipality is there at the table with them and will work collaboratively with them to ensure that there are ways to address those concerns that will actually happen. So thank you, Christina, for that question. It's incredibly important for the MDP to reflect that. So thank you for raising that point.
Thank you. Thanks, Nick, for that. I'm going to move over to Andrew now for this next question from an anonymous participant here. They're asking, are there any plans on how existing arts facilities can be supported for them to support the arts community?
Yeah, thank you for that question. It's an interesting one. I mean, I think at a high level, what we have to remember is, so this plan it's definitely talking about culture and the arts and community as being an incredibly important component of the next 20 years of Wood Buffalo. You know, is it going to have very specific policies on existing arts facilities and communities? Probably not in that level of specificity, because this is high level region wide. But what it does do is it creates a priority and it creates a direction that will translate itself into a component, an important piece of the council strategic plan, capital plans, operating plans and budgets for the municipality over the years. So if there's direction here that speaks to the importance and the prominence of arts and culture, the intent is that that starts to translate itself into actionable items through, you know, the far more specific directions of council. So I would expect that there will be policy language here that certainly supports arts and culture and existing facilities 100%. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much for that, Andrew. The next question I'm going to ask Such to give a response to. Fred is asking us, what types of infill development will the MDP be looking at? And specifically, are garden suites for and etc. being looked at?
Thank you for that question, Fred. It gives me an opportunity to explain a little bit difference between the planning documents that we have here. Your question about infill development and garden suites is something that is typically talked about in a land use bylaw. A municipal development plan is a high-level policy document that goes into policy creation for how development and growth would occur all throughout the region, not specifically on a lot or in a particular area. The hierarchy of documents that we have in planning is a municipal development plan, which is typically the highest in hierarchy, which will give you how areas would develop, the region would develop as a whole over a long period of time. Underneath it would be area structure plans, and these are plans for specific areas, for specific subdivisions like community of Eagle Ridge or Parsons Creek or Saline Creek for that matter. And that goes into details about how that particular area would get developed. And then we have the land use bylaw, which goes into regulations of how or what kind of development could we have on each lot. So any infill development or garden suites or development like that would be covered in a land use bylaw and not in a municipal development plan. We currently have a land use bylaw that is going in front of council for public hearing on April the 27th, and it is available online. So this proposed land use bylaw does talk about garden suites. If you get an opportunity, take a look at that document, which is available on municipality's website. And then if you have any views about it, you can absolutely present them in front of council on April the 27th. With that, I'll pass it on to Nadia. Thank you.
Thanks very much for that, Such. It's great to have the opportunity to talk about the different documents and how the MDP is the guiding, overarching, more visionary document for the next 20 years. And then we get down into the details in our land use bylaws. And also for mentioning the fact that people will have an opportunity to weigh in and to provide their feedback as well when that goes before council for consideration. I'm going to go back to Such again now. With this next question. It's anonymous. The question is, Truth and Reconciliation has been an ongoing discussion with council. Will this be included within the new draft? And if so, how?
Thank you so much for that question, Nadia. And I think it's not only an interesting one, but an important one to address here. Truth and reconciliation is a topic that we identified in our primary research that we need to include in the municipal development plan, in our new municipal development plan. And there are certain action items that the municipality has identified that we will be implementing through various plans. Our idea of implementing those action items is not merely to mention those items in the MDP, but through our policies, through our actions, demonstrate that we are working on them. And that's the idea. So all the policies that you see that will come up in the draft MDP will reflect those action items in one way or form. We are also planning on identifying, which policy leads to or takes care, not really takes care, but which policy is addressing which action item one way or the other in the MDP. So like I said, truth and reconciliation absolutely is on our agenda to address. Thank you, Nadia.
Thank you, Such, for that. The next question, I'm going to see if Nick can weigh in on this from Anonymous. And the question is, how does the MDP support recreation opportunities in the rural hamlets?
Thanks, Nadia. That's a great question. And there are really a lot of different answers to it, depending on which community we're talking about. Different rural communities obviously have different level of recreational assets that exist within them, and the context of a community such as Draper or Saprae Creek that's so close to Fort McMurray compared to, for example, a Janvier is very, very different. So that again speaks to why in the MDP we really need this focus on rural communities and need to ensure that we're reflecting the individual context of each community through the policies that we write. But ultimately, it's really a twofold approach when we talk about how we're going to ensure recreational opportunities exist in these communities. There's this blue and green network that I've been speaking to over and over throughout this evening's presentation. So making sure that community members can access the nature that's on their doorstep and are provided opportunities in every season of the year to be fit and active and engaged in the outdoors. And then where those amenities are provided by the municipality, ensuring that there's adequate access and programming and things to do and things to see and experience within municipal recreational amenities is incredibly important. So the MDP will be addressing each of those in turn and with each individual community in mind when we write those policies to ensure that no matter where you live in Wood Buffalo, we are thinking and providing answers to that question. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks very much. I know that at the last open house, we did talk a lot about the blue and the green networks. And so it's really great to talk a little bit more about those and what it means in terms of the MDP that we're looking at here. The next question, I'm going to bring Andrew back, if you could, Andrew. Anonymous is asking, how will the approval of the MDP directly affect me or my family moving forward? Andrew.
Great question. Not the easiest one to answer, but I'll give it a go here. You know, the MDP, it is a different document, sort of similar to what Such had mentioned in a way. Like, it's really easy to think of like a land use or a zoning bylaw. When that gets approved, all of a sudden you know where you can build a deck, where you can build a fence, if you want to do an addition onto your house, how big it can be, etc. But an MDP is not like that. An MDP is a visionary document. It's a document that has a long timeline to it. It's a document that gets implemented through subsequent work, through strategic plans of council, through budget cycles as well. So you'll start to see and notice changes over time. But the overarching intent here, when you think about that vision statement, when you think about the goals and the big moves of it, is that you'll start to see for your family, you know, economic diversification, hopefully an expanded employment base and opportunities and jobs. And one of the big goals too was to have conversations with post-secondary, so there could be opportunities if you have a young family for your kids to stay in Fort McMurray or stay in one of the rural communities, you know, and be part of the Wood Buffalo region over the long term. You know, if we start to see the green and the blue network worked out through subsequent implementation and design, you start to see an increase in credible amenity of regional of access here. So you'll start to see all of these things over time, and what it really starts to build upon is just the quality of life improves, the opportunities for employment and to have a meaningful life, recreation and cultural opportunities, arts opportunities can improve, and you'll just start to see that compared to where we are today, you know, that real focus on building on assets and building on strengths and increasing that resilience will just lead to, you know, a desire to remain part of the community and to really see it flourish. So thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Somebody is asking, is the presentation available to download? I just want to mention that not only will this presentation this evening in its entirety, where we have our team online to explain the draft MDP presentation as we go through, and you can listen to the questions and hear the answers. That will be available online at rmwb.ca/MDP. But also we're going to post the presentation itself there, like just the presentation, so you can have a look at one or the other, whatever is more what you're looking for. I have a question now coming from Fred, joining us, I think, from Fort Chipewyan. Such, I'm going to see if you can address this question. Fred is asking, what types of development opportunities will be generated or looked at for the Fort Chipewyan community to further enhance both its growth potential as well as maintaining cultural significance for the First Nations in the area? Question for you, Such.
Thank you, Nadia. That's definitely an interesting question. We haven't gotten to a point where we have specifically crafted policies for rural areas, but we do realize from our engagement sessions and from all the feedback that we have heard that it is immensely important for rural areas to not only maintain their culture, but also have development opportunities. A lot of rural areas are under a lot of development pressure, especially for the community of Fort Chipewyan, where there's this scarcity, I should say, of developable land, readily developable land. And so the MDP will not only sort of identify, there was an area structure plan that was recently approved for Fort Chipewyan, and it also identified some of the development opportunities in the areas which will be developed, which are developable in future. So the MDP will take that into consideration and identify those areas as developable areas, while also talking about importance of cultures in that area. Any development that happens in areas of cultural significance has to sort of abide by the rules and regulations of those cultures, I guess. So as such, we haven't really gotten down to crafting policies, but the MDP will absolutely take care of the cultural aspects and development aspects in a particular, or no, all the communities, I should say. That's my answer to that question, Nadia.
Thank you. Thanks very much. And just a reminder too, if you have follow-up questions or if you think of questions after our presentation this evening, while we're here this evening, enter your question in the Q&A chat. Afterwards, if you want to send in another question to us, we'd be happy to take that. Just go on to rmwb.ca/MDP and look for the Ask a Question function there. Thanks. The next question, I think this will be, I think I'll direct this to Nick. Nick, if you don't mind, from Anonymous, the question is, will the MDP take into consideration culturally sensitive areas, where culturally sensitive areas are located within the plan? For example, sensitive raptor ranges. Nick?
Thanks for that question, Nadia and Anonymous. And this is a profoundly important question and really sits at the heart of that one goal that Andrew spoke to earlier this evening. It's very important with this new place and community-based approach that we're contemplating for the municipal development plan to ensure that we are reflecting cultural sensitivities as much as we can and finding ways to really promote, celebrate, and enhance their visibility where appropriate. So while, as such mentioned, we aren't at the stage where we're developing detailed policies and really putting our pens to paper in terms of what exactly this looks like, rest assured, this is something that's at the front of mind for our entire team, is that we need to be very considerate and aware of these sensitivities and the areas that we should be celebrating, and we need to be recognizing as being important from this cultural lens. So I guess suffice to say that this is front of mind for us, and we are very concerned with and very aware of the need to do this in the new municipal development plan.
Thank you. Thanks, Nick. Before I move over to Andrew with this next question, I just want to remind people that we are looking at all of the questions as they're coming in. We have about 15 minutes left here in our session this evening. If you have questions, get them in to us. And also, even if you just have a comment, we are also recording all of the comments that we see coming into that chat box. So if you don't have a specific question, but you do have some feedback, by all means, we want to hear from you. Now, Andrew, Chris is asking, beyond February, what future opportunities will we have for public feedback? Andrew.
Great. Yeah, so you're right. We have the engagement over this month, and then really the primary engagement opportunity past February is going to be being a delegate and providing input at council during the public hearing process. I'm sure in advance of that, the draft plan will be available for people to review and to prepare comments on, but that delegation component of public hearing will be probably the next most important stage after this one.
Thank you. Yes, Andrew. And as we talked about earlier, in addition to the open houses, and we have in the presentation, we did talk about all the ways we have engaged. The online opportunities to provide feedback will remain open until February 28th. And yes, we really do encourage you to get in touch with us. You can go have a look at the presentation and provide your comments to us. We want to hear from you. The next question, I'm trying to get in all of the questions, so I'm going to send this one over to Nick. Anonymous again, but is asking, how will transit be part of the MDP specifically for the rural communities? Nick.
Transit is such a challenging topic when we look at rural areas, and it's a topic that I believe Wood Buffalo has actually been very proactive in addressing since the 2011 MDP. Introduction of regional transit service such as the Whoosh network, I think, has done a lot of good in some respects, and ensuring that members and residents of the municipality, regardless of where they live, are able to access the urban service area and the retail and cultural and social and health amenities that aren't necessarily available in their home communities. But I also think that there's more that we can do in the MDP in terms of setting the stage for further optimization, if we may, of that service. So while the MDP exists at too high of a level to necessarily prescribe exactly what service will look like or how it should be implemented, what it can do is really commit the municipality to looking at, consistent funding, so that way levels of service can be maintained over the long term, and that way people can get used to schedules and availability of these services as they're provided. And then also finding ways to make sure that where the transit service is being provided to these rural communities, it's being provided in a way that meets the needs of those using it first and foremost. So sometimes what we see in transit agencies across North America is that they aren't always as aligned with the best interests of the people who use transit service the most, and that's where we use the term optimization. There might be opportunities that are worth investigating with the regional transit service, and that's something the MDP can definitely include policy about. It's a great question, though. It is a challenge living in a rural community and not having that access, so it's well appreciated, and we will be thinking about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. Joseph is asking, how is the MDP dealing with the change in population?
Thank you, Nadia, for that question. As a part of MDP preparation process, typically municipalities or the working group would identify or work on population projections based on several factors for the next 20 or 30 years, whichever timeline is chosen for the MDP. And the very purpose of doing those projections is to ensure that we, over that period of time, 20 years, have sufficient infrastructure and lands available to meet the needs of rising population. In this case, as we stand today, we haven't finished those population models. We are working on them, but we do not have the final population numbers. However, at the same time, we are working on evaluating and assessing how much land do we have for development, and if those population numbers, once we have them, would be able, with that population and the land when compared to each other, would that be sufficient, or if we would need more infrastructure or more developable land. So that's the primary purpose of evaluating or identifying how population is going to grow in the region. While we don't have those numbers right now, when the final MDP comes out, those numbers would be available. Thank you, Nadia.
Thank you. Thanks, Such, for explaining that. I'm going to go over to Andrew now with two questions. Andrew, if I could, if you don't mind me sending a couple your way, just sort of rapid fire here. As I said, we are getting to the end of our time, and I want to try to get in everybody's questions. So we have Joshua, first of all, asking if you can elaborate on the blue and green networks for Joshua. And then Tim is asking us, how were the goals created for the MDP? Andrew?
Great. Yeah, happy to answer those questions. So the blue and green network is really just a high level concept right now, and it was an attempt, or it's an attempt to, one of the things we heard from public engagement was access to nature, access to recreation and the outdoors was really important. And there's a real opportunity within the region to create an expanded sort of interconnected trail network, parks, open space, natural areas network that would really just provide an incredible opportunity for people to explore and commune and be part of nature. It would, and with that green component is the rivers, the creeks, the streams, the blue component of it. So really thinking about natural areas, natural systems, and water, and bringing them together to create this. I mean, it would honestly be world class, and it would be a spectacularly impressive network of open space opportunities for residents. Frankly, even be a draw, be well beyond Wood Buffalo itself. So, I mean, If council ultimately moves ahead with this as a big move and a key idea, then there's a significant amount of design and work and collaboration with rights holders around, avoiding important traditional lands and making sure that the design of it is sensitive and integrated and appropriate, for sure. But that's the general idea of it, an interconnected series of trails, open spaces, sensitive lands, and water courses that could work together to provide an unparalleled access to nature. How were the goals created? The goals were created frankly as a direct result of the first round of public engagement and the stakeholder engagement and the rights holders engagements that we had in phase 1. And one of the slides I had earlier on sort of just showed you how we were taking a look at how we themed all of the stuff that we started to hear in that engagement. We took the place brand components that we also looked at and all of the previous, the existing MDP and some of the best practice stuff. And then it was really about synthesizing and bringing it together into sort of 5 key concise and succinct points that translated into the goals that work with the vision that ultimately lead to the big moves. So that's how it was created. Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew. I thought I was going to have to repeat that second question for you again. Thanks for that. I'm going to go to Nick. I believe it might be Nick, but please, if one of our other presenters here this evening would like to contribute, just signal that. But the question is from Anonymous. What does the MDP have in place, if anything, to transition to a more sustainable and climate-friendly economy? Does it look at having an RMWB community energy plan or assessing current systems from aging commercial buildings, transportation, and recreation/leisure? Nick, do you want to start us off with that one?
Yeah, thanks for that, Nadia. I'll give a cursory answer, and if there's anyone else in the team who would like to jump in, I'm sure in the back end here we can figure that out. At a high level, though, I would argue the entire premise of this new community and place-based approach to development that we're proposing for the MDP really does underpin this idea of being more sustainable and more climate-friendly across the entire region. Focusing on existing service growth areas, promoting infill intensification, really honing in on these community cores as mixed-use areas where appropriate in both the urban service area and throughout the rural communities of Wood Buffalo are all elements and aspects of land use planning that contribute to lower greenhouse gas emissions in a more sustainable built form. Something else that I've seen, at least in my work in this project so far, is there's actually a lot of initiatives happening at the grassroots level throughout the region that are really working towards these goals of a more sustainable and climate-friendly economy and a more energy-conscious approach to growth and development. So, for example, the Three Nations Power Corporation that's being prepared and developed up in Fort Chipewyan is an incredible example of local community organizations and rights holders coming together and finding a solution that dramatically decreases the environmental impact that entire community has. So I think my answer would be not just that the plan by its very nature promotes these ideas, but I think we'll also be including a lot of policy that works and seeks to enable and further promote these opportunities where community organizations, groups, stakeholders, and rights holders themselves have identified a lot of places where they can step in and make a pretty major impact themselves. So thanks for that question, and I'll default back to Nadia if no one else has anything else to add.
Hi, thanks very much, Nick. I have not seen any of our other presenters signal that they wanted to weigh in on this. And honestly, we're coming to the end of our time here. Before we do that, Such has just brought it to our attention that there may have been an error in the information about Draper. So before we sign off, I do want to go over to Such and just ask you to clarify that, Such, please.
Absolutely. Thank you, Nadia. I do want to provide a little bit of information. I think when we were talking about the Draper map, what we wanted to say was that we identify and we recognize that through the land use bylaw, there are opportunities for agricultural lands in Draper. we didn't really mean to say that agriculture is one of the activities that is happening in Draper right now. There was a lot of consultation that had happened on the Draper area structure plan that was done last year or last to last year. And again, a lot of consultation or engagement that happened on the land use bylaw side of things for Draper. So I just want to emphasize that all those consultations, all the engagement feedback that we've had from the land use bylaw team or the area structure plan team would be taken into consideration when we're writing policies, especially for Draper. Our intent is not to promote something over the other, but to ensure that the feedback that we've gained from residents is heard and captured in the plans that we are going to be producing here. So that's a bit of clarification that I want to provide. Again, it may have been just a slip of tongue or something. So what I just want to say is the feedback that we are getting will be taken into consideration, and we'll develop our plans based on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Sach. I appreciate that clarification. Thanks very much. We've come to the end of our time. Thank you so much to everybody who's joined us and for the great diversity of questions that we had posed here this evening. As we've talked about through the evening, we will be wrapping up at this stage of engagement and bringing the engagement for development of the MDP to a close so that we can bring it forward a little later in the spring to Council. And so in the meantime, if you have more questions, if you want to provide your feedback, please do log on to rmwb.ca/MDP, and we will be happy to hear from you there. We will have the presentation available. We will have the full, a recording of the full open house event that you've participated in this evening will be available online as well. I want to thank you again very much to all of our presenters and to everybody who's joined us. Thank you. Good night.